The blinding lights of the Philadelphia Convention Center hit me like a wave as I slipped into the front row seat, my heart pounding with a mix of rage and love. There she stood on the stage, Francesca Rossi, the woman I had married in secret 3 years ago, waving to the roaring crowd with that charismatic smile that hid all our pain. She had left me 6 months earlier to protect her political career from the stigma of our lesbian marriage, claiming it was for the greater good, but tonight on election night, I was here as her legal wife, ready to change everything. It had not always been this way. 2 years before that awful announcement, I met Francesca at a charity gala in Chicago where she was the keynote speaker, a rising star in local Pennsylvania politics, with her sharp intellect and warm brown eyes that pulled me in from across the crowded ballroom. I was McKenna Thompson, a 32-year-old civil rights lawyer fighting discrimination cases every day, and her speech on breaking barriers for women in public service resonated so deeply that when she approached me afterward, we talked for hours over coffee about dreams and fears, and the weight of expectations. From that night our connection grew fast, and quiet secret dinners in hidden restaurants, long walks along Lake Michigan where we held hands only when no one was looking, and whispered promises of a future where we would not have to hide. Francesca came from a prominent Italian-American family in Philadelphia. Her mother Isabella, a traditionalist who still attended Mass every Sunday and dreamed of her daughter marrying a nice man and giving her grandchildren. My own family in Chicago was more open, but still worried about how an open relationship might affect my legal career in conservative courtrooms. We chose to protect what we had by keeping it private, and when Francesca decided to run for state representative, we celebrated our love with a small legal marriage in Massachusetts, where no one knew us. The ceremony was simple, just us two witnesses and the justice of the peace. But the way Francesca looked at me that day with tears in her eyes and whispered, "I choose you forever," made my heart swell with certainty that we could face anything together. For the first year of our marriage, life felt like a beautiful secret. I supported her campaign from the shadows, attending events as a friend, donating quietly, and cheering her victories in private. Francesca won her state seat, and her star rose fast, with national media calling her a fresh voice for progressive values. We stole weekends away to the mountains where we cooked together, laughed until our sides hurt, and made love with the kind of tenderness that comes from knowing you are each other's safe place. But cracks began to show when she set her sights on Congress. Her campaign advisors, a tough woman named Lydia, warned that in a swing district like hers, any hint of being lesbian could cost her moderate voters and big donors. Isabella called almost daily, reminding Francesca of family reputation and the importance of image. I saw the toll it took on her, the late nights staring at polls, the way she would pull away when I reached for her hand in our apartment. Then came the night that shattered us. We were in our Chicago condo after a long day, Francesca pacing the living room, her hands trembling. "McKenna, the first love you more than anything, but if I come out now the campaign dies before it starts," she said, her voice breaking. "The donors are pulling back, the press is sniffing around, and Mom says voters in this district are not ready. I need to do this for us, for the change I can bring once I am in office." I begged her to reconsider, reminded her of our vows and the life we built, but she shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I have to protect what we are building, even if it means stepping back from us publicly for now." The next morning she announced her congressional run, and in the press conference when asked about her personal life, she smiled and said, "My focus is 100% on serving the people, no distractions." The implication was clear: I had become the distraction. I watched from the back of the room that day, my world crumbling as she denied the very thing that made us strong. For weeks afterward I barely left our apartment, replaying every moment, wondering where I went wrong. Friends urged me to move on, but how do you move on from the woman who knew every corner of your soul? Francesca called once to say it was temporary, but her voice was distant, already swallowed by the machine of politics. I threw myself into my cases, fighting for other people's rights while mine felt trampled. The pain was constant, a dull ache that sharpened every time I saw her face on television, smiling, that same smile now aimed at strangers. Yet deep down I knew the love had not vanished, it had only been buried under layers of fear and ambition. As the campaign heated up, I made a decision that would force the truth into the light, no matter the cost. The months after the breakup stretched into an endless winter in Chicago, where the wind off the lake felt like it cut straight through my chest. I went through the motions at work, winning a big discrimination case for a group of LGBTQ teachers, but every victory tasted hollow without Francesca to celebrate with. At night I would sit on our couch now half empty staring at the wedding photos we had hidden in a drawer, her smile so genuine it made me question if any of it had been real. My sister Sophia called daily from New York urging me to come visit to start dating again. But I could not imagine letting anyone else close, not when my heart still belonged to the woman who chose power over us. Meanwhile, Francesca's campaign exploded across Pennsylvania. I followed every update obsessively, watching her town halls on livestream, where she spoke passionately about healthcare and education, her voice strong, but her eyes carrying that familiar shadow I recognized as regret. Lydia, her campaign manager, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, kept the narrative tight, portraying Francesca as a dedicated single professional devoted only to her constituents. Rumors swirled in political circles about a possible relationship, but Francesca shut them down with careful non-answers. Isabella appeared at several events, standing proudly beside her daughter, reinforcing the image of a wholesome family unit, without room for complications like me. One evening in late summer I could not take the silence anymore, and drove to Philadelphia unannounced. I waited outside her campaign headquarters until she emerged, exhausted but still radiant. When she saw me, her face drained of color. "McKenna, what are you doing here?" she whispered, pulling me into a side alley away from prying eyes. I told her I missed her, that our marriage was not something to erase, and that hiding was destroying us both. She listened, her hands shaking as she touched my cheek, but then stepped back. "I cannot risk it now, the polls are tight, and if this comes out my opponents will paint me as unfit, the donors will flee, and everything I have fought for, the chance to actually make laws that protect people like us, will vanish." Her words cut deep because I knew she believed them, yet they felt like another betrayal. We argued in hushed tones until she finally said, "Please give me time. After the election we can figure us out." I left that night with a heavier heart, knowing time was the one thing that might never heal what was breaking. Back in Chicago, the isolation grew. I attended therapy, where I unpacked the guilt of loving someone whose ambition demanded my invisibility. My colleagues noticed my distraction, but I kept the details buried, afraid of judgment in a profession still navigating its own biases. Sophia flew in for a weekend, and we walked the lakefront, where she said, "You deserve someone who chooses you every day, not just in secret." Her words stung because they echoed my own doubts, but walking away from Francesca felt impossible. I replayed our happiest memories: the night we danced in the kitchen to old jazz records, the weekend we hiked in the Poconos where she promised me forever under a star-filled sky. Those moments clashed violently with the reality of her public life, where she posed for photos with potential suitors arranged by Lydia to squash rumors. As fall turned to winter, Francesca's lead in the polls widened, but at what cost? I received a late-night text from her, just a simple "I miss you too," but it came after a debate where she had again dodged personal questions. The mixed signals kept me tethered, hope flickering against the growing anger. Family pressure mounted for her too. Isabella flew to Chicago once to meet me in secret, begging me to stay away for her daughter's sake. "You love her, I see it, but politics is a brutal world, and she needs a clear path without distractions," she said, her voice firm, yet laced with regret. I wanted to scream that love was not a distraction, but I held back, knowing her traditional views came from a place of protection. The confrontation left me more determined than ever to find a way to remind Francesca of who we truly were. The campaign entered its final stretch, with rallies drawing thousands and media coverage intensifying. I booked a flight to Philadelphia for election night, telling myself it was closure, but deep down knowing it was confrontation. As I packed my bag with our marriage certificate tucked inside, I felt the weight of every choice, every sacrifice we had made, and the price we both still had to pay. The internal battle raged: love versus truth, ambition versus authenticity. But I knew one thing for certain: I could not let our story end in silence. Election night in Philadelphia buzzed with electric tension as volunteers hustled through the campaign headquarters, balloons and signs everywhere proclaiming victory for Francesca. I arrived early, showing my VIP pass arranged through a sympathetic friend in the party, and took my seat in the front row, heart hammering against my ribs. The air smelled of coffee and anticipation, but all I could focus on was the stage where Francesca would soon stand to claim what she had sacrificed us for. Lydia moved through the crowd, barking orders, her sharp eyes missing nothing as she coordinated with media teams. Isabella sat a few rows back, her posture rigid, scanning the room with maternal pride mixed with unspoken worry. As the results trickled in, showing Francesca with a comfortable lead, the crowd erupted in cheers. I sat motionless, my hands clenched around the envelope containing our legal marriage papers, the one proof that could upend everything. Memories flooded back of the night Francesca first told me about her congressional dream, her eyes shining with purpose, as we lay in bed after making love. I had supported her then, believing our love could withstand the spotlight. But now I saw the cost in the hollows under her eyes, the forced smiles on every news clip. The moral dilemma tore at me. Was I being selfish by showing up, or was silence the real betrayal of our vows? When Francesca finally took the stage, the room exploded. She thanked her team, her family, and the voters, her voice cracking with emotion. But as her gaze swept the front row, it locked on mine. And for a split second the politician facade cracked, raw shock flashing across her face. I stood slowly, holding her stare, willing her to see the woman who had loved her through every hidden moment. The crowd sensed something shifting, murmurs rippling as cameras swung toward me. Lydia noticed too, her face paling as she whispered urgently into her earpiece. Isabella rose halfway, her hand flying to her mouth, recognizing me from that painful meeting months ago. Francesca recovered quickly, finishing her speech with calls for unity. But her eyes kept darting back to me. As the celebration swelled, I pushed forward through well-wishers until I reached the edge of the stage, security hesitating at my determined expression. Francesca stepped down, microphone still in hand. And for the first time in months we stood face to face in public. "McKenna, what are you doing?" she hissed, her voice low but trembling. I pulled the certificate from the envelope, holding it up so only she could see. "Reminding you of the promise you made, the one you walked away from to protect this," she said, gesturing at the cheering room. Her campaign manager Lydia appeared beside us, eyes wide with alarm. "We need to talk privately now," she insisted, grabbing Francesca's arm. We moved to a side room, the noise of the party muffled behind closed doors. Francesca paced, hands in her hair, while Lydia demanded explanations. Isabella burst in moments later, her face a mask of disapproval. "This is exactly what I warned against," she said, pointing at me. "You cannot throw away years of work for this." The confrontation escalated, voices rising as each woman revealed her stakes. Francesca torn between the power she had clawed for and the love she had buried, Lydia calculating damage control, Isabella defending family honor, and me standing firm on truth and loyalty. I laid out the pain of being erased, the nights I cried alone, the way her ambition had forced me to question my worth. Francesca listened, tears welling, but defended her choices, saying I did it for us, for the chance to fight bigger battles from inside the system. The moral lines blurred, ambition demanding sacrifice, love demanding honesty, and none of us escaped unscathed. As the argument peaked, Francesca's phone buzzed with victory confirmation, but the joy was tainted. She looked at me with eyes full of the woman I fell in love with, and whispered, "I never stopped loving you." In that moment the room felt smaller, the weight of societal prejudice, family expectations, and personal trade-offs pressing down on all of us. The night was far from over, and the real reckoning had only begun. The private room in the convention center became a pressure cooker as accusations and defenses flew between us. Lydia paced, calculating the fallout if the marriage leaked before morning media cycles, her voice clipped as she outlined options from denial to controlled reveal. Isabella stood rigid, arms crossed, insisting that coming out now would destroy Francesca's credibility with key voters who had backed her on traditional values. I refused to back down, holding the certificate like a shield, reminding them that love was not a liability, but the foundation Francesca had built her life on. Francesca sat on the edge of a table, head in hands, the confident candidate, replaced by the conflicted woman I knew so well, her internal struggle written across every tense muscle. Flashbacks hit me hard as I watched her the first time she introduced me to Isabella as just a close friend, the way her hand had trembled in mine under the table. I remembered late nights drafting policy papers together, her head on my shoulder, as she dreamed aloud about legislation that would protect families like ours. Those shared visions now clashed with the reality of her public denial, and the betrayal stung deeper, knowing she had chosen this path despite our promises. Sophia, my sister, texted me updates from Chicago urging caution. But I was past caution. This was about forcing the awakening we both needed. The confrontation dragged on, with Francesca finally speaking, her voice raw. "Every day on the trail, I thought about you, McKenna, about how much easier it would be to stand here with you beside me openly. But the polls, the focus groups, they all said the district is not ready, and one misstep means losing the seat to someone who does not care about our issues. Lydia nodded vigorously, adding that coming out mid-campaign could tank donations and energize opponents with smear tactics. Isabella softened slightly, laying a hand on her daughter's shoulder. You have sacrificed enough already, do not throw it away now. I countered with my own pain, describing the isolation, the whispers at work, the way our love had become a secret shame, and asked if any career was worth erasing who we were. The question hung heavy, exposing the moral gray area where good intentions collided with human cost. Hours passed as results confirmed Francesca's win, but the celebration outside felt distant. We reached a fragile truce, agreeing to delay any public statement until morning. But the damage was done. The team knew, the family knew, and the truth was no longer buried. Francesca pulled me aside as the others stepped out, her fingers brushing mine, sending sparks through the exhaustion. I never meant to hurt you this much, she whispered, but I was scared of losing everything, including the chance to make real change. Her admission cracked something in me, the anger mixing with empathy, as I saw the toll ambition had taken on her spirit. We shared a quiet moment, hands intertwined, the romantic connection flickering back to life amid the chaos. Yet the night brought more tests as media began sniffing around rumors of a mystery woman in the front row. Lydia fielded calls while Isabella retreated to call relatives, her voice tense with damage control. I stepped outside for air, the cool Philadelphia night air clearing my head as I weighed the price we had all paid. Francesca, her peace of mind; Isabella, her ideals; Lydia, her control; and me, my dignity. The awakening was painful but necessary, forcing us to confront whether hiding had protected us or simply prolonged the wound. As dawn approached, the decisions ahead loomed large, each one carrying consequences that would reshape our lives forever. Morning light filtered through the hotel windows where we had relocated for privacy, the campaign team working furiously on statements and spin. Francesca sat across from me at the small table, her victory high, tempered by exhaustion and uncertainty, her eyes searching mine for answers neither of us had. We talked for hours, revisiting every turning point, the secret marriage, the growing pressures, the breakup that left us both broken. I described the months of loneliness, the way I had thrown myself into cases to numb the pain. And she confessed the nights she cried in hotel rooms, regretting the choice that seemed necessary at the time. The dialogue peeled back layers of resentment, revealing the deep love that had survived despite everything. Lydia joined us with updates. The media was buzzing with speculation but no confirmation yet, giving us a narrow window. She pushed for a controlled narrative, Francesca coming out on her terms after the win to frame it as strength. But I argued for full honesty, no more half-truths. Isabella arrived with coffee, her face lined with worry. But she listened as Francesca explained her internal conflict between family expectations and personal truth. The conversation turned to broader societal issues, the prejudice that still force people like us into shadows, the moral cost of compromising identity for power. We all shared stories of other women in politics who had faced similar dilemmas, each tale underscoring the high stakes. As the day wore on, Francesca made calls to key supporters, testing waters, and surprisingly many responded with support, some even sharing their own hidden stories. This shifted the energy, giving her courage to consider the path forward. We took a quiet walk in a nearby park, the same kind of place where we had once dreamed together, her hand finding mine naturally as leaves crunched underfoot. The moment felt like a small awakening, the romantic bond rekindling through simple touch and shared silence. Yet tension remained as we discussed the price of truth, potential backlash for her career, strained family ties, and my own professional risks. Sophia arrived from Chicago, adding her perspective as a neutral voice, encouraging us to prioritize love while acknowledging the real-world barriers. The group dynamic evolved from confrontation to collaboration, each woman contributing to the hard choices ahead, Francesca weighing ambition against authenticity, Isabella grappling with evolving beliefs, Lydia adapting strategies, and me holding space for the love that started it all. By afternoon a plan emerged. Francesca would address the media that evening, acknowledging our marriage and framing it as part of her commitment to equality. The decision brought relief mixed with fear, but it felt right, a step toward healing the wounds we had inflicted on each other. As evening approached, the hotel buzzed with preparation, Francesca changing into a fresh suit, her posture straighter, her eyes clearer. I stood beside her, adjusting her collar, our fingers lingering in a tender gesture that spoke volumes. The romantic spark was back, not the hidden passion of before, but a stronger, more honest connection forged in fire. The day had been one of growth, each of us paying the emotional toll, but emerging more aware of what truly mattered. With the press conference looming, the final test waited. But we faced it together, ready to own the consequences of our choices. The press conference room filled quickly with reporters' cameras flashing as Francesca took the podium, me standing just off to the side, visible and unhidden for the first time. She began with thanks for the victory, then paused, her voice steady as she said, "There is something personal I need to share tonight. I am married to the woman who has been my partner and greatest support through this journey, McKenna Thompson." Gasps rippled through the room, flashes intensifying as she gestured for me to join her. I stepped forward, our hands clasping naturally, the gesture simple, yet revolutionary in that moment. Francesca continued, explaining the decision to hide had come from fear, but love had taught her that authenticity was the real power. The questions came fast, some supportive, others probing the timing and impact on her term. Lydia managed the flow while Isabella watched from the side, her expression a mix of pride and adjustment. Backstage, after the frenzy, we gathered in a quiet corner, the team processing the shift, supporters sending messages of solidarity, and a few critics voicing disappointment. Francesca turned to me, her eyes shining with tears and relief. "I am sorry for the pain I caused, but thank you for forcing me to see what I was losing." We embraced, then, the world fading as the romantic connection we had fought for wrapped around us, warm and real. In the days that followed, the story dominated headlines, some hailing Francesca as brave, others questioning her judgment. Her approval ratings dipped initially, but stabilized as constituents responded to her honesty. Isabella began the slow process of acceptance, calling me daughter for the first time over dinner. Lydia adapted the office, embracing the new narrative that strengthened Francesca's brand on equality issues. For me, the victory was personal, watching the woman I loved reclaim her wholeness, the price of confrontation worth every tear and doubt. We moved forward together, navigating the spotlight as a couple, our bond deeper for the trials it survived. Yet the journey left scars, reminding us of the trade-offs ambition demanded and the courage truth required. Francesca continued her work in Congress, fighting for policies that protected families like ours, while I balanced my practice with new advocacy. The awakening we both experienced reshaped our lives, proving that love, when tested, could emerge stronger. As we sat on our porch one evening watching the sunset, hands intertwined, I reflected on every decision, every sacrifice, and the women who had shaped the path. In the end, was Francesca right to sacrifice our love for her political ambitions, believing it served a greater cause? Or was my public stand the necessary force that brought honesty and healing to a world still grappling with prejudice and hidden truths?